This is a story about my cheating girlfriend Jenny got married with my best friend Ben. I was extremely saddened. One of the day my wife Sylvia got a call and was told there was turmoil in Ben and Jen land. Ben did get a DNA test, and he wasn't the father. Woo. I had just walked into my favorite country bar and grill. I sat at a small table in back and ordered up a sandwich, fries and a beer. I sat there watching the TV. They had a PBS channel on, and they were talking about country music, all the old stars who were mostly dead now, but a few were still living. Hugh Verrill. It was pretty sad as they talked about the lives of the greats. I never realized how many came from extremely poor families who never had anything. As I was eating my dinner, I looked up and saw my best friend Ben walk in with Jenny. I was extremely saddened. You see, I thought Jenny was my girlfriend. I had asked her to go out tonight, and she said she already promised some friends she would go out with them tonight, and we could go out tomorrow. Jenny and I had been dating a good 6 months, and I thought we were exclusive. We went out almost every weekend. I knew I was falling for her big time, and she said she felt the same about me. We were thinking of getting engaged, but thought we should wait a few more months. There wasn't any hurry since we dated regularly. After the program ended on TV, someone went to the jukebox and played Craze. I was listening to the song, and this is the second verse. I knew you'd love me, as long as you wanted, and then someday you'd leave me for somebody new. It made me wonder if Ben was the new guy. The problem was, Ben knew how I felt about Jenny. I guess our bro code didn't mean anything to him. I continued to listen to the song as the two of them were acting like lovers. The last verse played. Crazy for thinking that my love could hold you. I'm crazy for trying and crazy for crying, and I'm crazy for loving you. I got up from my table and walked up to Ben and Jenny. They looked up at me, and Ben said, Charlie, shut the duck up. If I ever see you again, one of us will be spending a long time in the hospital. As for you, Jenny, I'm totally disappointed in you. Needless to say, we're through. You showed me your true colors. I left the bar. The next day, my phone was ringing all day. It was Jenny, but I didn't want to talk to her. Later in the day, the phone rang. It was Ben, so I answered it. What the duck do you want? Charlie, I'm sorry. You know, I've always thought Jenny was 53XY, and as we were talking at work, I asked her out and she said yes. Don't ducking lie to me. You knew she was my girl and asked her out anyway. How many times have you been with her? Charlie, it was only. How ducking many times, Ben? You lie to me and I'll come looking for you. 3 times, Charlie. We've been together 3 times. We kind of fell for each other. I'm sorry. What about Sylvia? Does she know you cheated on her? She deserves a hell of a lot better than you. Ben, I never want to see you again, and as far as Jenny goes, she's all yours. I hung up the phone. Sylvia was Ben's girlfriend. Jenny, Ben, and Sylvia all worked at the same plant. There is a story about how we all met. The phone rang again, and it was Jenny. I figured I might as well get it over with. What do you want, Jenny? I want to apologize. Ben asked me out a dozen times, and I decided to go out with him once. It didn't mean anything. Stop your ducking lying. I talked to Ben, and he told me that you were with him at least 3 times. I figured it was probably more than that. What was it? The money. Good luck with that. Too money hungry as H. You deserve each other. I want absolutely nothing to do with you. The only one I feel sorry for is Sylvia. She thought you and Ben were her friends. Just stay away from me and stop calling. I grew up in Kentucky. I had 8 siblings. I was the oldest and played football in high school. When I was a senior, I got a scholarship at a college in Ohio. I was 6'3" and weighed 260 pounds. I was an offensive lineman. My parents couldn't afford to send me to college, so I jumped at the scholarship. I wanted to become a mechanical engineer because I loved working with my hands. I was always a little shy, but loved the ladies. Because of my sisters, I always treated women with respect. My mom always said to treat girls the way I would want my sisters treated. I became good friends with a guy named Ben. He seemed like a friendly guy, but was too scrawny to play sports. He did seem fairly smart. He told me his family had money. He said he didn't have much, but someday he might inherit something. He was going for a degree in business management. When I wasn't playing football, we hung around together. He was good with the ladies. We attended a number of parties and the ladies were plentiful. I was the quiet one, and quite a few girls dated me. I give Ben the credit for that. Because of my shyness, I probably wouldn't have talked to them on my own. After graduation, I stayed in Ohio and got a job as a mechanical engineer at Ford Motor Company. The pay was great and I found a small apartment close to the plant. I also picked up a late model pickup truck. Every week I would save money and send my parents $500 a month to help them out. Dad was coal miner and we were a loving family. Ben got a job in a warehouse in the same city as the Ford plant. I found out that he was one of our suppliers. Eventually he became the warehouse manager. We would hang around together on the weekends. He told me he found a girlfriend who worked in his plant. Her name was Sylvia, and she was over inventory control. He introduced me to Sylvia, and I could have fallen in love with her immediately. But Ben and I had a bro agreement that we wouldn't mess with the other's girl. It was hard, but I decided to keep the code. I dated a couple of women from my plant, but they were just friends. I couldn't always double date with Ben because of the feelings I would get being around Sylvia. She was always so nice to me. Ben invited me to their plant's Christmas party. Since they were one of our suppliers, I agreed to go. At their party, I met a beautiful woman whose name was Jenny. She was built, with nice boobs and a nice figure. She dressed a little 53er than Sylvia, and was more of a flirt. She told me she worked with Ben and Sylvia. She was a secretary for one of the bosses. I explained my job to her, and we spent the whole night dancing together. We made plans to see each other, and we went out with Ben and Sylvia for New Year's Eve. Sylvia said she was happy for me that I found someone, but she didn't sound sincere. That night, I took Jenny to my apartment. She was good, really good. The next morning she told me she was surprised that I lived in a small apartment. I explained to her that my job was fairly new. I didn't need much to live on and sent money home to help my family. I told her someday I would worry about material things, but not now. She mentioned that she heard that Ben was from a wealthy family and asked me if it was true, since he was my best friend. I told her it was and that they paid for his education. We continued dating and had been going out nearly every weekend. I was falling for her, and she told me that she really cared for me also. We did a lot of things together, but making love or having 53x was the best part. I really didn't like her flirting personality, or her always talking about material things. I told her we could have a good life together. I still felt funny when we double dated with Ben and Sylvia. There was just something between us, and I don't know what it was. Update: it had been 6 months since Jenny and I started dating. We talked about our future and eventually getting engaged. Jenny said we had plenty of time to think about that. We went to a county fair, and I went to one of the cheap jewelry counters and bought Jenny a friendship ring. I told her it meant she was mine till she was ready to get engaged. She smiled at me when she put it on. I should mention here that I did work out at least 3 days a week after work. I was down to 230 pounds and thought I looked pretty good. At that point, I saw them come into the country bar and grill. I have to mention that it took a lot out of me seeing my girlfriend and best friend kissing at the restaurant. After I had seen them at the restaurant and talked. What do you mean, Sylvia? You mean there were others? A regular thing. I wanted to tell you. Thought didn't want to hurt you in case at work I saw her going out to lunch with her boss, Brad. It seemed to be was wrong. Then I found out about Jen and Ben. I dropped him like a hot potato when I found out. I cut all ties with both of them. It's a little rough seeing them together at work, but I keep myself busy. Sylvia, thank you for calling. I was worried about you. I consider you one of my best friends. Maybe we can see each other sometime. I'd like that, Charlie. Nice talking to you. We said our goodbyes, and I wasn't sure if I was happier or sadder after talking to her. A couple of weeks went by, and one evening I stopped by the supermarket and ran into Sylvia. Hi, Charlie, good to see you. How's everything going? Fine, how about you? Are you back on the dating scene? She smiled at me. I've been asked out quite a few times, but I've been turning them down. I've got my eye on a special guy and don't want to ruin my chances if he calls. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to ask you if you wanted to go. Yes, I'll go out with you. You're the one I was hoping would call. When and where do you want to go? I need to know how to dress. I was thinking about Saturday and going to my favorite country bar and grill. We said our goodbyes and I told her I would be by at 6. When I got to her house, she was dressed in Western style. Jeans, a vest, cowgirl hat, and her boots. She looked great. I opened the door to my truck and she hopped in. On Saturdays, they had a country western band and singer. We got a booth and a couple of beers. The band wouldn't start for another hour, and it gave us time to talk. I was surprised to learn that she was born and raised in Kentucky in the next county over from mine. She went to college in Kentucky, put in resumes for a job, and ended up at the supply plant in Ohio. We ordered some food. I got my double bacon cheeseburger and fries. She ordered a Reuben sandwich and we shared the fries. It felt so good seeing her again. She did ask me if this was the bar where I caught Ben and Jen. I told her it was, but I wasn't about to give up my favorite watering hole because of 2 cheaters. She just smiled at me. The band started playing and we got up to dance. They played 2 slow songs to start to get couples to dance. They always played the old favorites. That's what the people wanted to hear. They played a fast one and we both sat out. I mentioned to Sylvia that I wasn't much on the fast dances, but I liked to watch the women. They played a couple of tunes by Roy Orbison. I loved his music. Then they played and sung a couple of songs by Loretta Lynn. Sylvia and I danced the slow ones. The announcer called up the ladies for a little line dancing. They were getting up, and even a few guys joined them. Aren't you going to line dance? I smiled at Sylvia. You just want to watch my big butt. She smiled as she got up and joined the other women. They began line dancing, and I just stared at Sylvia. She looked right at me and shook her booty. I smiled and even clapped for her. When the song was over, she came up to me smiling and I kissed her. I pulled away and told her I was sorry. I'm not, she replied and kissed me again. We had fun dancing and having a few beers. Time went by way too fast. They said they were playing their last song. I held Sylvia close as we danced. I even leaned over and kissed her as the song ended. I took her home and asked her out for the following Saturday. I told her we could go to Cedar Point, a big amusement park in Ohio. She said yes and we kissed goodnight. I didn't want to push her on our first date. I felt so good at work all week. I called Sylvia on Friday to verify our date for Saturday. She said she had always heard of the park but had never been there. I picked her up Saturday morning and we headed to the park. We talked on the way and I asked her if she told Ben or Jens that we were dating. She said she didn't talk to either one of them. We had a great time riding all the roller coasters and other rides. They also had a number of shows that we saw. On our way home, we stopped at a Texas Roadhouse for dinner. We were really tired by the time we got home. Sylvia had a roommate, Joan, who was a nice lady, probably in her 50s. She worked at a retail store. Sylvia said it was nice having a roommate, and Joan acted like her mother, who she loved. I told Sylvia I would be going out of town the following weekend, but would like to see her the week after. She said to give her a call when I got back. I kissed her and told her I really cared for her. She told me that she always liked me, too. I called her as soon as I got home and asked her if she wanted to go to a big dinner party. My boss was throwing an anniversary party for he and his wife. It was being held at the Hilton Hotel. Sylvia, I'm getting a room for the night because there will be a lot of drinking. I understand if you don't want to go. Yes, Charlie, I'd love to go with you. We won't need 2 beds. You see, I'm falling in love with you. Please just be honest with me and don't lead me on. I would never hurt you and I won't let anyone else ever hurt you again. Sylvia, can we use your car? I don't want to take Yoy to a fancy party in my truck. We can take my car and I'll tell Joan I won't be home that night. I left my truck at her house and we took her car. We went early and thought we'd get dressed up at the hotel. Sylvia told me that she wanted to find another job. She didn't like seeing Ben and Jen all the time. In fact, she said there was a rumor that Jen was pregnant. When we got dressed for the party, I dressed in the bathroom. I wore a tux. When I walked into the bedroom, Sylvia looked sexy. She had on a blue dress that fit her like a glove. Her hair was down to her shoulders. She looked sexy, yet elegant. You look so beautiful. I don't even care if we go to the party. No, you don't. I didn't go through all this trouble just to take it all off again. She did smile when she said it. We headed down to the party. We were met by my boss and his wife. He introduced his wife to us and welcomed us to the party. I watched as we walked away, and he couldn't help but stare at Sylvia. I knew a lot of the people there and introduced Sylvia to everyone I knew. She did get a lot of compliments. We got some drinks and found a table. They had all kinds of appetizers and were having a dinner later. Sylvia saw a couple of women she knew. She was in charge of inventory control and dealt with these women. I walked over and talked with the head of HR. Mary, do we have any opening for someone in inventory control or in the supply chain? As a matter of fact, we do. Janice is retiring next month, and I was asked to find her a replacement. Do you have someone in mind? My date, you met her. Sylvia is looking for another place to work. She is in charge of inventory control. She loves her job but is ready for a change. Have her come and see me Monday and I'll give her an interview. She sure is one beautiful woman. Thanks, Mary, I appreciate it. I'm sure you do. She laughed. The party was great. I danced with a few of the wives of the employees and Sylvia danced with their husbands. Most of the time, we danced with each other. The dinner was superb. They had a choice of roast beef, chicken or shrimp, plus all the fixing. We had a couple of more drinks, said goodnight to our host and headed up to our room. Sylvia, are you sure about this? I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage of you. Charlie, shut up and make love to me. I helped her take off her dress and we hung it up. We also hung up my tux. We pulled down the covers. I got turned off the lights and we cuddled ourselves to sleep. The last thing I heard her say was, I love you, Charlie. I woke up to the smell of hot coffee. Sylvia had taken a shower, got dressed and made us each a cup of coffee. Morning, Charlie. Have a good night's sleep. The best in a long time, I replied. I took a quick shower, drank my coffee and we both headed down to the dining room and had a nice breakfast. I saw a lot of fellow employees and they smiled at us. Looks like we're seen as a couple now, I remarked to Sylvia. Mary, our HR person, stopped at our table as she was leaving and told Sylvia, see you Monday, smiled and left. What was that all about? Sylvia asked. Oh, I forgot to mention that you have an interview with Mary on Monday at 4. I smiled. You did say you were thinking of changing jobs, didn't you? With tears in her eyes, she said, Charlie, I hope I'm not dreaming. I love you so much. We talked on the way home. Sylvia, I hope I'm not moving too fast, but I'm going to Kentucky to see my parents in 2 weeks. I'd like for you to come with me. I'll be leaving Friday night and coming back on Sunday. We can stop and see your parents also. I'd love to go, but my parents are somewhat old-fashioned and we probably won't be sleeping together. It will all work out, I'm sure, I replied. Final update. We left for our visit to Kentucky. She said the latest rumor was Ben and Jen were getting married next month because she was beginning to show. I think Jen believes she is marrying into money, but she's going to find out that it's not Ben with the money, but his parents. Ben does live high on the hog, but it's mostly debt, I told her. We arrived at my parents' house. It was a big old farmhouse with lots of bedrooms and bathrooms. My brothers and sisters who still lived at home came out to greet us, and Mom and Dad followed. I hugged everyone and introduced Sylvia. They all hugged her. We all must have talked for a couple of hours. I knew they would all love Sylvia. She was looking at pictures on our wall. Mom had pictures of all of us when we were kids. Sylvia was staring at one particular picture of me in my football uniform. She had tears in her eyes. Sylvia, are you okay? What's the problem? Do you remember when you were playing football in an away game at Grayling? After the game, you walked through the tunnel and there were 2 guys trying to pull a girl with a yellow sweater into the tunnel. You grabbed one guy and threw him down, then tackled the other guy. You told them if they ever bothered that girl again, you'd come back and finish the job. You then walked away into the locker room. Yes, I remember that. But I've never told anyone about that. How did you find out? Charlie, I was that girl. I never saw your face, only the number 67 on your back. I tried to locate you, but no one knew who you were. I did find out your name was Charles, but that was all I ever knew. I was waiting by the tunnel for my girlfriend when those 2 guys grabbed me, pulled me into the tunnel and said we could have some fun. I screamed for them to stop and let me go. Then you showed up. They never bothered me again. She reached up and kissed me. For some reason, I felt I knew you the first time I saw you and Ben introduced me to you. That's the only good thing I could say about Ben. He introduced me to you. Mom had a bed made up for Sylvia and told me I could sleep in the basement where they had an extra bed. About 1 in the morning, I got company when Sylvia showed up. We made quiet love, which wasn't easy, and she headed back to bed about an hour later. On Saturday, we headed over to see Sylvia's family. She never told me that her parents were wealthy. They had a beautiful home. Sylvia also had 2 younger sisters who were beautiful. They were a few years younger than Sylvia. She introduced me as her boyfriend. I heard Sandy, one of her sisters, tell Sylvia that I was a hunk. We went in and talked for a while. Hank, her father, asked me about my job and about my background. He was just concerned about his little girl, as he called her. Mr. Carter, I want to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage and would like to have your blessing. Sylvia and I had not really talked about it, and she looked at me in surprise and with tears in her eyes. We haven't known each other very long, but we love each other and we can grow in our marriage together. Charlie, I know you didn't have to ask me, but I respect you for it. By now you should know Sylvia does what she wants. Sylvia, do you love Charlie? Yes, Daddy, I do, with all my heart. Then you have my blessing. Only you have to get married here in Kentucky so your mom and I can give you away properly. Oh, and we'll pay for the wedding. I surprised everyone when I pulled an engagement ring out of my pocket, knelt down on one knee and asked Sylvia to marry me. She said yes, kissed me, and ran over and kissed her dad and hugged her mom, who was crying. We then all got up and had a fabulous chicken dinner. We headed back over to my parent house, but told the Carters we would let them know our future plans. Mom and Dad were overjoyed when we told them we were engaged. A lot of my relatives who still lived in the area were all coming over for a cookout. My dad announced he was king of the grill, and Mom just smiled at him as she went inside to get the meat and all the other dishes ready. Sylvia went in to help her. She said she liked to cook, also. All the relatives came by to see me and meet Sylvia. She was the only woman I had ever brought home to meet the family, and they all told me she was a keeper and to keep her happy. After a big day of party, we said goodbye to all the relatives and told them we would notify them of our wedding date. Just before we headed for bed, Sylvia whispered to me that my mom told her that when she came back upstairs, to watch out for the stuff on the stairs. I guess she accidentally kicked a pair of shoes and they went down the stairs. She tried to apologize, but Mom told her she was young once, and acting like Sylvia was probably why she had so many kids. Sylvia did show up again downstairs, and we made quiet love. At least as quiet as we could. She didn't go back upstairs until close to 5 in the morning. After a round of love-making, we fell asleep. When we got up in the morning, Mom and Sylvia just smiled at each other. After a big country breakfast, we hugged and kissed everyone goodbye and headed for home. Monday, Sylvia had her appointment with our HR department. On Tuesday, she got a call from Mary, who told her she got the job and could turn in her 2-week notice. She called to tell me, but I already knew. We made plans to celebrate and go out for dinner that evening at my favorite country bar. We both ordered steak dinners. She told me that Ben and Jen were on vacation that week and the following. They were flying to Las Vegas to get married. She said it was the most pleasant 2 weeks she ever had at the plant, with no Ben and Jen to bother her. She said everyone was sorry to see her leave, but knew she was getting a better job. Ford had the highest paying jobs in the area. She was lucky to get an interview, but she deserved it. She never told anyone about our dating or getting engaged. She said she left an anonymous note on Ben's desk before she left. It said, "You might want to get a DNA test when the baby is born. Your wife was going to a lot of lunches with her boss. Oh, and congratulations." Needless to say, she never signed it. When she started at our plant, she always had a big smile on her face. Whenever guys asked her out, she would show them her ring and tell them that Charlie was her fiancé. They knew better than to mess with me. Sylvia said Joan was helping her plan the wedding. Joan was like a mother hen. She did have a married daughter of her own who she saw quite often. She just wanted to be on her own, and she and Sylvia became friends and shared expenses. I would stop by a couple of times a week and see if there was anything I could help with. I did call my mom and asked her if she could get me a list of all the relatives and friends I should invite on our side of the family. She said she'd do better than that. She bought some invitations and made them out for us. I let her know the wedding date, which was 4 months away. Sylvia talked to her mother and told her the date, also. Her mom and dad were going to find a church and a large hall for the reception. Her mom also said she would send out invitations on their side of the family. Her dad was a businessman and had a lot of contacts and customers. I was a nervous wreck, and I was doing the least. I asked a number of people at work if they would be interested in attending. I told them we were getting married in Kentucky. I was surprised at how many said they planned on attending. Joan had connections at the retail store and found a dressmaker for Sylvia. She also said she and her daughter would be attending. Sophie, Sylvia's mother, called and said she got a caterer, but needed a number of attendees when it got closer to the wedding. She said her husband, Hank, found a good band. Everything seemed to be coming together. I asked Sylvia if she thought we were overdoing it. This was going to be one expensive wedding. "Charlie, this big wedding is all my parents' idea. This is what they have wanted ever since we were little girls. Believe me, my sisters will be having the same type of wedding. Why didn't you ever tell me you came from money?" "Because I wanted you to want me for me. Just so you know, I never told Ben or anyone else except Joan." "Does it make a difference to you?" "No, I want you for you, not anything else. If you need me to, I'll sign a prenup." "Charlie, there will be no prenup. We're going to be together forever. I truly believe that. Besides, I don't have all that much. Maybe later by inheritance, but not much now. I'll have a husband to support me." Sylvia figured out her wedding party. Her dad would be giving her away. The older of her 2 sisters would be her maid of honor, and her other sister would be one of the bridesmaids. She asked my 2 married sisters to take a long shower and shaved. I put on my tux. I rented a white one to match Sylvia's dress. My brothers were there in their black tuxes. All 4 of my brothers were in the wedding party. It was time to head over to the church. It was in the next county, but only 20 miles away. It was a huge church and my brother said it would hold over 600 people. The people started arriving and me and my brothers were seating them as they came in. They told me I didn't have to help, but I told them I needed to do something. Joan and her daughter arrived and I seated them up with the families on Sylvia's side. I was seating relatives I haven't seen in years. I was glad to see some of my friends from work show up. My boss, Mark, and his wife had flown in. I was told to go to the front of the church because Sylvia's limo had arrived and I wasn't to see her. I went up to talk with my parents for a few minutes. A woman started playing some music on the organ. After a couple of songs, someone made an announcement for the guests to be seated. The wedding was about to begin. All weddings are a little different, and I went up front and stood with the minister. First to come down the aisle was Sandy, with my brother. They looked good together. They each took their place up front. Next was Marie, with my other single brother. They were followed by my married brothers with their wives. One of my nephews came down as the ring bearer. I had the real wedding ring in my pocket. 2 men rolled out a white cloth and my niece walked down the aisle throwing rose petals. The music changed and everyone stood up. They started the wedding march, and Sylvia was coming down the aisle on the arm of her very proud father. She looked so beautiful, she honestly looked like an angel. I could feel the tears running down my face. "Who gives this woman to this man?" "Her mother and I," her father answered. We repeated our vows. I put the ring on her finger, was told I could kiss the bride, and I did. "Friends and relatives, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Charles Jones." Everyone stood up and cheered. We went to the church door with the rest of the wedding party and thanked everyone for coming. It took over a half hour to empty the church. As they left, everyone went over to the hall that was rented. There were drinks and appetizers for everyone till we got there. They even had a band playing, but the people weren't really dancing yet. Tables were all set up. When we arrived at the hall, everyone stood up and cheered for us. We took our seats. Mr. Carter said a few words and said the food was ready. They had the serving tables set up on both sides, so everyone got served rather quickly. Sylvia and I were served first, but were probably the last to finish. We were too busy kissing every 10 seconds to the clanging of the glasses. They moved some of the tables back from the dance floor so more people would be able to dance. Sylvia and I were the first on the dance floor, followed by the rest of the wedding party, and then everyone joined in. The reception lasted a good 4 hours. Some guests even ate again. It was a wonderful night. Epilogue. We went on our cruise and had a wonderful time. Good thing we took my truck to the wedding. I rented a small U-Haul, and we loaded it up with all the gifts we received. When we got home, we went house hunting. We found a nice 3-bedroom home with a hot tub. For a couple of weeks, we stayed at my small apartment. Sylvia just said we needed something a little bigger. All the gifts we brought back, Joan said we could leave at her house, seeing we wouldn't be living there. We asked her if she could make it on her own, and she said she didn't have any money problems. She just liked taking care of Sylvia, but now she had me to do that. Every night we'd make out a bunch of thank you cards. I think we're about done now. We have lunch together at work about 3 times a week. It's been 3 months since the wedding, and everything is great. We never argue and always talk out our differences. We were always told to communicate, which we always do. Sylvia said that she got a call from one of her friends at the other plant, and Jenny found out that Ben doesn't have any money but has a lot of debt. She was also told that someone told Ben he may want to get a DNA test once Jenny had the baby. They don't know where the letter came from. It was a couple of weeks later that Sylvia got another call and was told there was turmoil in Ben and Jen land. Ben did get a DNA test, and he wasn't the father. Crazy, isn't it? So that is my update. Thanks to all who have commented on my previous posts. This community has done a phenomenal job of keeping my head straight through this entire process. Infidelity is such a brutal blow, but I honestly feel like I am coming out of this as a better and stronger person than I was before. Thank you for watching video. Subscribe for more daily relationship stories.